In this video, I'm going to review the BESTVA Pro 4000 LED light. This is one of the largest lights that I've reviewed, and it also has very high intensity. This might just be the light that you've been looking for. In this video, I'm going to go through the general specifications of the light, give you my impressions of the light, and then I'll go through the 10-point checklist that I've developed for purchasing an LED light. This series of lights comes in 3 different models, and this is the larger one. This is the 4000. It also comes as a Pro 1000 and a Pro 2000. All 3 models are designed the same way. The 1000 and 2000 only has one power supply, so you'll only get one of these. Because of the size of the 4000, it needs 2 power supplies, but it only uses one dimmer switch that will do the whole light. Now this is a board type design, so there's a aluminum board with all the LEDs attached to it. But what BESTVA has done is improved the back of the light. So they've added these aluminum fins here to help dissipate light. And I think that's really important. When manufacturers first came out with these board designs, one of the issues was that there wasn't any good way to cool them. And LED lights have a reduced lifespan if they get too hot. So we want to keep them as cool as possible. These fins will draw the heat away from the light and keep those LEDs cooler. Now, I was interested to know, how efficient is this? I mean, what kind of life expectancy can you get on this? And I contacted the manufacturer, and they don't have any data yet. So we really can't say that this is a better design. In theory it is, but do we get a 10% increase in LED life, or do we get a 70% increase? That's an important number as far as I'm concerned. So although the design's great, we don't know how good it is yet. The light comes with an improved hanging system. Rather than simple hooks, it has these special design connectors, and they plug into the holes here, and then you slide them in place and tighten this knot. Once both of them are in place, this is going to be a very secure system. And that's actually important because this is a pretty heavy light. This light weighs about 18 pounds. And so you have to make sure it's mounted pretty well. It also comes supplied with a standard pulley system. So the light hooks onto here, and then the pulley system lets you raise and lower the light. Now for many light stands, this is going to get a bit long, and you really don't need this because you can adjust the intensity with this. So raising and lowering this light isn't quite so important, but if you're growing in a grow tent where you've got lots of height, then this will be a nice feature. The light itself is about 2 feet by 2 feet, which is a pretty good sized light. The list price online is $359, and it comes with a 3-year warranty. The dimmer switch goes all the way from 0, so this is off, all the way up to maximum. The other nice thing about this light is that there's also an on-off switch on the power cord. Now the power cord is only about 6 feet long, and I wish it was a bit longer, but you can always extend that with a power bar. But by having an on-off switch here and here, this makes it very versatile. One of the things you notice right away with this light is that the construction is very well made. Everything's solid. All of these pieces are nice and thick. It is a real quality built light. The LED chips that they use are the high-end Samsung chips, and there's 912 on this board. Some of the infrared ones are in here, and then you have a mixture of cool white and warm light LED chips. Distribution is equal over the whole board. So what you find is that you get a good highlight intensity in the middle, because in the middle you're getting light from the center coming down and from the sides coming in. As you go away from the light towards the edge, you're going to see a fairly steep drop off in light intensity. Now I know it's not really important when you're buying a light, but I think this is one of the best looking lights on the market. I like the design and I love the color green. I wouldn't buy a light because it looks really great, but this light has a lot of the features you need and it looks great. So why not pick one that's nicer looking? Now let's have a look at my 10-point checklist. First thing I want to see is the spectra. Has the manufacturer provided that for this light? It's the only way to know whether or not you've got a good balanced light. I had a look in the brochure, and the spectra there shows a pretty good spectra with a very high peak at 730. That's the infrared range, which is important for plant growth, but this peak seemed unusually high. So I went to the website to see if I could find a different spectra, and in fact I did. The spectra online and the spectra in the brochure don't match, and I see that as a pretty big mistake. So I contacted the manufacturer and they confirmed that the one on their website is the correct one. It has a good peak in the red and blue range, and it has quite a bit of yellow and green. Now the green is important. A lot of people think plants don't use green light, but that turns out not to be true. You want to see a peak in the green range. And there's also a peak in the 730 infrared range, which is good for flowering. So I'll give it a check mark for the spectra. I think this is a pretty balanced light and should be really good for growing plants. The second thing I look for is the maximum ppf value. How much light does this unit give off? It turns out that the ppfd at 12 inches high in the center of the light is 1922. Now that's a really high value. Keep in mind that full sunlight is around 1500. So this light is producing light equivalent to or even more than sunlight right in the center of the light. So that's a pretty good ppfd value. So I'll give it a check mark for that. Number 3, is this a purple light or a white light? Now, a few years ago, BESTVA was one of the leaders in making purple lights. And the reason for using those lights is that the efficiency of LED chips was much better in the blue and red range. But in the last couple years, the technology has increased. And right now, we can get chips that give us a white light with the same kind of efficiency, and in fact, higher efficiency than the older purple lights. And white light is much more pleasant to work under. This light is a good balance of warm and cool LED chips, so we'll get a check mark for number 3. One of the most important things that I want to see is the ppfd map. This shows me the distribution of light, not just in the center, but around the edges of the light. It also gives me an idea how large of an area the light illuminates. This light is advertised to cover an area of 6 by 6 feet, so I want to know how much light do I have at the edges of that range. Well, I went looking for the map, and this is all I found. It shows you the highest intensity, which is right in the center, and then it shows you a few squares. Now, I don't know how big those squares are. Are those 1-foot squares or 6-inch squares? Some light manufacturers do it in feet and others in 6-inch increments. So I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Even if it was in feet, I mean, it's supposed to cover an area that's 6 by 6 feet, but I only have a couple squares here. And it doesn't even show me the light in the corners. So although this diagram is kind of useful, it's really not a ppfd map. I looked at some other reviews online for this light, and I found that in the corners of a 4 by 4 foot area, the intensity of the light drops to about 250. So what we have here is a light that is very intense in the center and drops off fairly quickly along the edges. Since I couldn't find a ppfd map, I decided to contact the manufacturer, and they told me that the map wasn't available. So I won't give it a check mark for ppfd map. I think that is a vital piece of information that you need to provide if you're going to sell an LED light. Number 5, the wattage. Now this light is called a Pro 4000, and sometimes you'll even see a W after that. So they call it a 4,000 watt light. But what it really is a 415 watt light. That number is available as part of the product description, so I will give it a check mark for that. It turns out that all of the LED manufacturers add an extra 0 on their wattage rating. I'm not sure why they do that. I guess it makes their light seem stronger. BESTVA was honest and did provide the correct value in the description. Number 6, Veg versus bloom. Some of the high-end lights allow you to adjust between veg and bloom. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a nice to have feature, but it really isn't necessary. And I don't usually use it, but that's not a feature on this light, so I won't give it a check mark. Number 7 is the efficiency. The efficiency tells you how much light you're going to get for every dollar of hydro you buy. And the LEDs in this light are rated for 2.9 micromoles per joule. Those are some of the highest efficiency LEDs you can get. So I certainly give it a check mark here. This light is really efficient in producing light. Number 8 is a dimmer switch. Now, dimmer switches on smaller lights aren't that important because they're not that intense and you can always raise and lower them. But it's much more convenient if they come with a dimmer switch, and this light does have one. In fact, what I really like about this dimmer switch is it is an actual on and off switch. Many of the dimmer switches only change the amount of light, but they can't turn the light off. This dimmer switch goes all the way down to 0, so it's a really nice one. I give it a check mark for the dimmer switch. Number 9 is the daisy chaining. How easy is it for you to take several of these lights and daisy chain them together, either for controlling the intensity or for supplying the hydro? Well, this light doesn't offer any daisy chaining capabilities. That's not a particularly big problem. Most homeowners aren't going to use very many of these daisy chained together, and you can always solve that problem with a power bar. Number 10 is the fan. This light doesn't come with a fan, and I don't think it really needs a fan. A fan is more important when the power supply is built inside the light, and this light uses an external design. And this light has also come along and added the extra fins that we've already talked about, and this should provide very good heat dissipation from the light and keep it running fairly cool. So although it doesn't have a fan, I don't think it really needs a fan, but I can't give it a check mark for that. Did I mention that this light also comes with some cool shades? This light is so intense that if you're working around it with the lights on, it's not a bad idea to wear some glasses. The quality of the light is very high, and this is a manufacturer that has been around for a while and produces a good quality product with lots of positive reviews. The design of the light with the fins at the back for removing excess heat should mean that these LEDs will last you a very long time. It has one of the highest efficiencies on the market. These LEDs are 2.9 value, and that's about the best you can get in grow lights right now. The intensity is high enough that you can grow just about anything under it. Even things like orchids, which want high light for flowering. You'd have no problem growing your tomato seedlings under these lights, and any other type of house plant. In fact, if you grow most house plants under here, you're probably going to want to turn the dimmer down. You don't need this at full strength for your house plants. Most homeowners that are growing lights use some sort of a bench system, and those tend to be 2 to 3 feet wide. And that's a bit of a problem for this light. It's really designed for a larger area. The manufacturer recommends it for a 6 by 6 foot area. That's great for pot growers, and you can grow several plants under that. But most homeowners who are growing house plants don't have an area like that. And that's one problem I see with this light. I think you'd be better off getting the smaller unit, the Pro 1000. Maybe get 2 Pro 1000 side by side. You'll still get the same quality of light, the same efficiency LED chips, but you'll cover an area that's longer instead of so square. And I think that would be better for the homeowner. All in all, this is a great light, and I wouldn't have any reservations about buying it. I'm sure it'll last a very long time for you. Now, if you want to see some of my other videos on LED lights, I've done some on LED myths, and I've reviewed other LED lights. Just click in the top right-hand corner, and that'll take you to my other LED videos. Thanks very much for being part of this one. Happy growing.